Mumbai itself. All right. So, good evening. Let us start our today's last session. We would like to first of all thank Urban Platter, Wellcure, and also Wholesome Tales that they are now the sponsors for this event. And there are loads of our event partners. I would like to personally thank them. Also, I would like to thank Ruchika Chitrabhanu, who has helped me quite a lot with this event. And of course, Dr. Sarvanan, who has been always there for all the sessions. Also, I would like to thank Vatsal Nathwani, who has been my technical support for all the videos and net related stuff, and Samir Nerlekar, who has been for everything related to the website. Without their help, I couldn't have done this event. So, uh, thank you, doctors, for being here. I will pass on to now Dr. Sarvanan, and he should be introducing all of you for the session today. And he'll be asking the questions as appropriate. The attendees are, they'll join in as and when. We already have collected questions from your previous sessions, and our discussion will go on. And in between, if they may also ask questions, but Dr. Sarvanan will be the moderator. So, hello, Dr. Jenny Prabhu, welcome.
Dr. Prabhu is an emergency physician. Is your are you an
Pediatrician.
Pediatrician and internist also.
It's not clear. Sorry, can you come again?
Pediatrician and also an internal medicine doctor so an adult specialist also.
Okay. Where are you based?
They have moved from US back to India now, so they are in Mumbai actually.
Oh, very nice.
So, good evening, everyone. I welcome all of you for this question and answer session of this Health Revolution Summit. And we are nearing to the completion of this event. And all these days, I hope you have been enjoying all the presentations given by the healthcare professionals. And you might have learned a lot of new things. You might have got a lot of information. I hope you're all putting it into practice and enjoying healthy plant-based meals every day. And today we are having special guests. We have Dr. Rupa Shah here, who is the main organizer of this event. And we have Dr. Sanjeev Khanna, we have Dr. Ajoy Prabhu and Dr. Jenny Prabhu. I welcome all of them to this Q&A session. I would like to give a short intro about each of our special guests today. And after the introductions, we'll start with the question and answer sessions. So if you have any questions, as usual, please feel free to type it in the chat column and we'll be forwarding those questions to the doctors and you'll be getting the answers to your questions. All right. So first of all, I would like to introduce Dr. Sanjeev Khanna. Dr. Sanjeev Khanna is a consulting gastroenterologist at Max Nanavati and Holy Spirit Hospital, Criticare Hospitals. And we have Dr. Ajoy Prabhu here and Dr. Jenny Prabhu here. So Dr. Jenny Prabhu is a co-founder and CEO of Dr. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. Go on.
All right. Okay. So yeah, Dr. Jenny Prabhu is a doctor with 2 MDs in pediatrics and internal medicine, and with a strong inclination towards science since a young age and a special interest in infectious diseases and preventive medicine, particularly diet and lifestyle-based approach. Rather than pharmaceutical medication, Dr. Jenny attempts to minimize the use of regular medication treatment. So, she has been awarded and recognized with various awards and honors such as Outstanding Primary Care Physician at the Department of Pediatrics, University of Maryland, honors in both her internal medicine and surgery clerkships. Student Honor Award by the American Society for Clinical Pathology, Chairman's Award for Student Role Model and Professionalism, and graduated BS with high honors. So she wrote her first peer-reviewed journal when she was only 20 years old and her medical book chapter at 28 years of age. Cersei Health is a dream project with a vision to fulfill an unmet need in healthcare that are transforming lives and a hope to bring in a remarkable change in the approach to medicine both in India and worldwide. She specializes in lifestyle medicine, internal medicine, pediatrics, infectious disease, and preventative medicine. I welcome Dr. Jenny Prabhu for this session. I welcome Dr. Sanjeev Khanna for this session, and I would like to give a short intro about Dr. Ajay Prabhu. So, Dr. Ajay Prabhu left his leadership position with the US government to transition into preventative and lifestyle medicine with an objective to transform the health quotient of individuals. He co-founded Cersei Health with his partner Dr. Jennifer Prabhu to fulfill an unmet need and educate people about the transformative potential of chronic disease reversal using a holistic yet pragmatic approach. So we have these doctors here. I welcome Dr. Ajay Prabhu for this session, and we will go ahead with the questions. Participants, if you have any questions, please feel free to post it here. So I have a few questions to ask each of these doctors. So my first question goes to Dr. Sanjeev Khanna. Sir, could you please tell us how a plant-based diet can be helpful for gut health from your experience?
That's a fairly broad question, and I think the benefits could be multiple. Just off the cuff, I could think of a very good treatment for chronic constipation. Also, the attendant problems like hemorrhoids, etc., would all get relieved. Fissures in ano, diverticulosis, which is getting very common and which is distinctly uncommon in people with plant-based diets, predominantly plant-based diets, and to a certain extent, the relatively newfound entity of SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And one entity which sort of overlaps into all of these, which is the irritable bowel syndrome, especially the constipation predominant irritable bowel syndrome. So I would think, Dr. Saravanan, that the benefit of fiber is across the spectrum in gastroenterology. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And I hope we'll have more questions. So I have a few questions to Dr. Jenny and to Dr. Ajay Prabhu. So the next question is about pediatrics. So I would like to get some clarity from Dr. Jenny Prabhu. Ma'am, could you please tell us how a plant-based diet can be a complete and a wholesome, healthy diet for children? And many have this doubt whether it is safe to transition to a plant-based diet, especially with kids. Could you please enlighten us?
That's, I guess the first example I would give is our own son, who's 5 years old and has been plant-based his whole life, and he's thriving in 90th percentile for his height, and almost too smart sometimes. So certainly he's a good example. Of course, I realize that's only one child, but I mean, the important thing to know is you can get complete nutrition from plants. You don't need to have milk, cow's milk. You don't need to have paneer. You don't need to have cheese. You don't need to have meat. You can get more than enough protein. And of course, as Dr. Khanna mentioned, fiber. You get much more fiber from a plant-based diet, and so many children suffer with chronic constipation due to lack of fiber. They suffer from chronic constipation due to too much milk, which I think, and also anemia. Also, a lot of parents don't realize giving too much milk causes anemia. So many common things we see in pediatrics can be prevented and/or solved actually from a plant-based diet. A lot of parents are concerned about certain vitamins and nutrients. Again, you can get vitamin D from plants. You can get plenty of iron from plants. The only thing that we suggest is a vitamin B12 supplement, which can be gotten from a plant-based diet, but it's very difficult, especially with kids being picky. So that's really the only supplement that's needed. And honestly, even in a vegetarian diet and sometimes even in a meat-centric diet, kids still need a B12 supplement. So, but plenty of our own patients are plant-based children, and we haven't seen, knock on wood, any issues with them. And it's in the, as I would say, it's all in the literature.
It's everywhere. Sorry, my voice is gone. It's everywhere in the literature, folks. So I can give you example after example of case studies as well as clinical trials where it shows that plant-based diet is just as nutritious and safe as an omnivorous diet is.
Otherwise, we wouldn't let our kids do it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Jenny Prabhu and Dr. Ajay Prabhu, for your answer. So I have another question for Dr. Ajay Prabhu, which is related to lifestyle medicine. So Dr. Ajay Prabhu, could you please tell us what type of lifestyle diseases do you see a plant-based diet help with? And can you share some of your experiences of remarkable reversals with lifestyle diseases?
My first counter question is, how many hours do you have, really? Because yeah, thank you so much. Because it came as quite a surprise to us also, because we had read this in the literature, but when you start practicing it and finding that's actually happened, it's an incredible transformation. But to get to your point, we, Dr. Jenny and I, categorized them. So we went through the literature, I went through the literature, and then she and I sat down and went through a lot of chronic diseases. And I think right now the number is at 31, the chronic diseases that we, and as all the plant-based doctors can testify, can actually be reversed, not just stop in its track, but actually reversed. So, I'm going to just take 2 or 3 at the top of the list just to give you an idea, especially for India. I'm not talking about US, which is where we used to be. In India, number one thing that can really be impacted maximum is diabetes or general metabolic syndrome types. Then comes heart disease, arthritis, PCOS, and then a whole bunch of slew of other chronic diseases that affect our society can clearly be reversed. To give you an example, thank you so much. To give you an example of, so we started working with a gentleman in Mumbai. Gentleman resides in Chembur. He's 75 now, right? 75. It's 75 years of age, and he came to us with diabetes. He had bypass, right? He had prostate issues and Parkinson's, and we kind of primarily Dr. Jenny diagnosed him with a little bit of depression issues. 2.5 months later, just 2.5 months later, we had to actually tell him, stop your diabetes medication, stop it completely. And he was already vegetarian, so he still had, so for 30 years he had diabetes, for 20 years he had cardiac issues. And in 2.5 months, we had to tell him, whatever you're doing, your lifestyle, you're doing a fantastic job, stop your medication. And I think you also stopped his blood pressure medication also. He had BP, hypertension. And she had to reduce that by half. And today he has only Parkinson's, which, we had assured him right from the beginning that, we may not be able to do much with that. And right now he's got no prostate issues, no diabetes, no heart disease. I mean, he had bypass surgery, so we don't know what is continuing issues with his heart. And he's 75 years of age. There's another case that I did not handle personally. She handled, so I'd much rather let her tell you guys about a gentleman that's even older than this. How old is?
In his 80s.
He's in his 80s now, late 80s, right? So you want to tell him about
that? Was similar. I mean, he had peripheral vascular disease, so he had plaques in his leg arteries and his internal abdominal arteries, and he also had arthritis, and he had some. I think he had thyroid issues and some insomnia. And he also switched to a vegan diet, and similar results within a couple months. Had remarkable, even what I was surprised at is changes in his um, fairly rapidly progressing vascular disease. It basically went to a halt. And his family was, that was the thing, he was able to walk 4 miles a day on the treadmill every day, no matter what. And for someone that's 80 something, especially with vascular disease, that's pretty amazing.
And one of the cases I want to mention is a lady came to us here again in Mumbai. She had scleroderma and rheumatoid arthritis. And we said, look, scleroderma, we know we can at least help you with, but rheumatoid arthritis, we said, most likely we told her very upfront that we will not be able to help her. That was a year and a half ago. And 6 months through our program, it took us a little longer, but 6 months through our program, she was so shy of her face and all because of the scleroderma that she would always wear a big mask and would not even show it to us. And one time she came on the Zoom call and she took her mask. She said, "I have a surprise for you," and she took her mask off, and she looked, perfectly normal. All the swelling and all had gone completely. And she said, "I have one more surprise," which she didn't think much of, but we were like really shocked. She said, "My rheumatoid arthritis is improved." She said, "I could not hold a glass earlier. My children used to walk behind me to make sure that I can hold the glass." And she said, "My rheumatoid arthritis is almost gone." And now husband and wife like walk 11 to they're running now again. So she used to be a runner. Sorry, she used to be a marathon runner. She's back to running again. So, whoever is listening to us right now, I know, I don't want to preach to the choir. The doctors already know this.
Wow. Very, very interesting. Very interesting
It's
case.
incredible. I'm sure you guys have similar stories like this. And that is what really makes us going. That if we can help these kind of people, we can certainly help the rest. Just need to get the word out there. This is possible. This is doable.
Yeah, because
Amazing.
rheumatoid arthritis, there's so much of medication prescribed, and the side effects of medications are sometimes equally bad. So you have one disease and you have another superimposed disease because of the remedies that you have been given. It's quite hard. Thank you very much for sharing this.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ajay Prabhu and Dr. Jenny Prabhu. Your sharing definitely inspires a lot of people because you're speaking from your professional experience. So on hearing this, I hope many would get the inspiration to embark their journey following a healthy plant-based diet and lifestyle. So now I have some question related to gastroenterology. I would request Dr. Sanjeev Khanna to answer this. So could you please tell us about B12 deficiency because of atrophic gastritis, and also B12 deficiency happening because of the issues with the intrinsic factor? Can you please explain more about this?
Sure, Dr. Saravanan. You've touched a chord which is very close to my heart. This is something which I've been researching over the last almost 12 to 15 years. So during clinical practice, we noticed that a lot of patients who were hardcore non-vegetarians, we started doing B12 levels as a screening test almost for most of our patients, even when they came with something which was not classically a B12 deficient disease, like say megaloblastic anemia or severe subacute combined degeneration is a very rare thing. I've just seen a few cases, but peripheral neuropathy one sees often. And a lot of these patients who were hardcore non-vegetarians had B12 deficiency. And the vegetarians also had, but the classical teaching all through the years from the last so many years, right? If you go to your science book in secondary school, science book, right from there, since they start teaching you on vitamins, they say that vitamin B12 only meat or only animal based food, which always intrigued me, and I wondered that how is 60% of India, which is vegetarian presumably, is alive, and B12 being absolutely essential to life. What is really happening? And that led me to do this study, which I embarked on in medical students. Of course, it's under publication, so I can't talk in detail about it, but I've mentioned a few bits and pieces in my talk, just the outline. And we found that so many non-vegetarians were B12 deficient that I thought that the whole idea that only B12 being found only in animal-based diet was possibly a bit of stretching things a little too far. And then we found that then in the 80s we started doing endoscopies more and more often, and we discovered this entity of gastritis, and then atrophic gastritis, and then the test for rapid urease test from the gastric biopsy came for Helicobacter, and then of course Marshall and Warren's path-breaking Nobel Prize winning research on Helicobacter came in. And then Helicobacter got defined as the number one cause of atrophic gastritis. That when it spreads proximally into the gastric fundus, where the parietal glands are cells are located, it causes destruction of the mucosa there, and therefore a fall in the parietal cell is very peculiar, that it produces two substances which are absolutely critical to B12 absorption. One is intrinsic factor and the second is hydrochloric acid. And without both of them, B12 absorption is not possible. So you need the hydrochloric acid to break down the B12 from its protein binding in the stomach. And the hydrochloric acid also activates the protein breakdown enzyme called pepsinogen to its active form called pepsin. And pepsin then separates the B12 from the protein moiety and then allows it to be bound to something which your salivary glands secrete. Very interestingly, the salivary glands allow the B12 to be chaperoned into the duodenum, and that substance is called haptocorin, or it's also called transcobalamin 1. That takes the B12. The intrinsic factor, meanwhile, has come into the stomach if your parietal cells are active, and the complex of haptocorin and B12 enters the duodenum. Now, something magical happens in the stomach, and the stomach is a boiling cauldron of hydrochloric acid. It's terribly acidic. It's almost emitting acidic fluids. And you go 1 millimeter beyond the pylorus, just where the stomach then joins the small intestine, and then everything changes to an absolutely alkaline form. And in the alkaline form, because of pancreatic juices, the pancreas pours its digestive juices into the duodenum, and they change the entire pH to alkaline, and the intrinsic factor then gets a chance to combine with the B12 in the alkaline milieu. And then that intrinsic factor then chaperones the B12 sort of all the way down to the distal ileum, to the last part of the small intestine, where there is reception waiting for, there are welcoming cells waiting for the B12 to get in. They then get into the bloodstream by another transferring protein called transcobalamin 2. That then enters the portal circulation and reaches the liver, where it gets stored in the liver for years. So when you see a patient with a low B12 level, it means that he has been deficient for a significant number of years, and his tissues have been depleted of B12 for a very long time, and they have suffered damage. And many times this is subclinical, and the patients may not be complaining, but you'll find many times patient telling you that they're getting numbness in their hands, in their feet, they're feeling tired all the time, they're feeling exhausted very easily, they're forgetting. You find young people nowadays getting what is called brain fog. I suddenly to the room. I didn't know why you were there for. I forgot. That sort of thing. And these are very classical symptoms of early B12 deficiency. Of course, when they get advanced, then you'll get the macrocytic and the megaloblastic anemia, and then you'll get the peripheral neuropathy, and you'll get the cord signs coming on. And very interestingly, you can get infertility in women, you can get erectile dysfunction in males, and you can get developmental delay in children. The growth of a child can be affected severely by B12 deficiency, and even that can happen even if the mother is B12 deficient. So the problem starts in utero. There's tremendous research done by Dr. Yagnik from Pune, who's done pioneering work on B12 deficiency in our population, and especially in the mothers. And possibly all this leads to a state of nutritional problems right from your first day of birth. And that is why one of the reasons why a country of 1.4 billion people is hardly able to produce a handful of Olympic athletes or a handful of world-class winners, because we just don't have the wherewithal, the muscle and the nerve power to compete at the international level because we are depleted right from birth. And that's the story of intrinsic factor. Now, there is, in the West, there is a disease which I think you're alluding to that, Dr. Saravanan, which is called pernicious anemia, which is an autoimmune attack on the gastric parietal cells, which fortunately is rare in our country. We are not seeing that so much, but we have a lot of Helicobacter, and I'm still not clear on this whether Helicobacter should be eradicated, because Helicobacter is found in 80% of our population in some of the studies, and at least 70% in most cities. So whether you have to go on a shotgun killing of Helicobacter all through, and then try to bring, the data is not robust on that, to treat Helicobacter to bring up B12. And I think bringing up B12 is fairly easy by other means. So these would be the common causes.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir, for the detailed information. Thank you. So, Dr. Jenny Prabhu, we have a question related to pediatrics. So the questioner, Sumit Kumar, asks how to increase vitamins and mineral absorption in children.
Eat more plants. Is the general answer, but in terms of, I mean, it's really, in children, it can be, we understand as parents ourselves to get your children to eat vegetables. And, but fortunately, in terms of my opinion, I think the most perfect food you can give your kids is the lentil, which is fortunate in India because lentils are in everything. I think most kids have dal and rice from the moment they start taking solid food. So from that perspective, the lentil provides protein, provides vitamins, provides fiber, provides calcium. I mean, almost every nutrient you need is in a lentil. So most parents can probably rest assured if your kid is eating dal and rice, that's a fair amount of their nutritional needs. There's ways, if your kid is not, if you're not lucky enough to have a child that is easily eating vegetables, there are ways to kind of hide them in things. So if your child likes pasta, you can cook palak or spinach, other, potatoes, other green vegetables, shimla mirchi or like red and green peppers. You can easily hide them in pasta sauces, in soups if your children like them. Yeah, in khichdi, which is harder to hide, but if you cook it really well, I suppose. But basically, if you can get a couple servings of fruits, and don't forget fruits, I guess I should mention that. Most kids love fruit. So fruit, also you have to remember, have a ton of vitamins, even a little bit of protein, lots of fiber. Fiber, I think, is one of the most underappreciated nutrients. So if your child is getting enough fiber through fruits, vegetables, and or both, then they're getting more than enough. And protein, again, as I mentioned earlier, is always a concern, but we don't need as much protein, I think science has shown, as people a lot of the bodybuilders will say you need massive amounts of protein to survive and flourish. That's not true, but that's difficult to get across to people. So you can get plenty of protein from, dals, legumes, fruits, veggies. And one other thing to mention about pediatrics is don't underestimate your child's palate. Always introduce them to new foods, because I think a lot of parents say, oh, my kid won't like that, only adults like that. But you'd be surprised the things that children will like. Your taste buds can, after a couple introductions of a different food, maybe 4 or 5, they will adjust to that. And then you'd be surprised what your children will like. So never give up. If they don't like it the first time, try it again a couple of weeks later.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Jenny Prabhu, for your tips. And I hope this will be very useful for many parents to incorporate healthful plant-based diet for their kids. Dr. Ajay Prabhu, I have a question. So could you please tell us more about metabolic syndrome and how a plant-based diet can help with this?
Yeah, so metabolic syndrome, like the name implies, it's a syndrome. It's a conglomeration of these, just before symptoms, and they're not really reached this level of becoming a disease, like an actual, diabetes disease or something. But with our modern day lifestyle, what is happening is we are inactive. We eat the wrong types of foods. We stress ourselves too much. We don't sleep enough. So all these lead to what medical science has not been able to kind of like call it a disease. So we call it a metabolic syndrome. Okay, so we have you might have 2 of these symptoms, another 3rd symptom, but it's not really a disease. But as it progresses, it turns into a particular disease or the other. So lifestyle medicine, the latest branch of medicine, really revolves around improving your lifestyle and thereby getting rid of, stopping it right at the metabolic syndrome level itself and reversing it. So lifestyle medicine really is nothing new, especially to Indians. It's nothing new. Just go back, and we always say this to our patients, go back to the way our ancestors used to live, and that's all you have to do. You really need to move a lot more. So I'm not talking about like going to the gym or running or something. Just simply move more. Think about, instead of taking an escalator, walk. Think about, instead of sending a servant to buy some bhaji tarkari, go there and do it. So those little things make a huge difference in your life. When you're about to go to sleep, don't think about like watching TV and then suddenly falling asleep, or looking at your device and suddenly falling asleep. Go through the process just like the way they used to. I mean, even now in places, I guess, in villages in India, as soon as it's sundown, you try to go to sleep, right? So we should try to do that. I know we ourselves, we try to practice it as much as we can, but the point is that we need to go back to that same circadian rhythm of, nightfall means sleep, day, sunshine means waking up, and that helps build your immunity. It generally makes your body more robust. So move more. And I can talk for hours about why human beings are really meant to eat only plants, not animals. I will not go into that, but all I want to say is that if we go back to the way, eating only plants, it has been shown repeatedly in literature that your gut flora, and I'm sure Dr. Khanna can attest to this, gut flora improves. And by that, you don't get any autoimmune diseases, you get less allergies. So that is another part, which is, you improve your diet, don't eat processed stuff. You eat processed stuff, it's not really, it does not do any good at all. Try to eat things in the, not the raw form, but as close to the plant as possible. So meaning less processed plants is what you should be eating. And finally, I think, there has to be something to be said about trying to meditate and be at peace with oneself, not be contented. Be contented and be less stressed about oneself. So those are the kind of general broad strokes I'm talking about in terms of lifestyle medicine. Nothing new, it's just that we put it all together in a particular branch of medicine and calling it lifestyle medicine. And repeatedly we've shown that, we meaning the medical world has shown that these things actually can help get rid of your chronic disease.
Thank you. Thank you, doctor, for your explanation. So there is one more question for Dr. Ajay Prabhu. So what is the difference you have observed between the two countries about eating habits of people, Indians and Americans? Where can we change as Indians our eating style and habits?
First of all, I can talk for hours on this. I can tell you that generally speaking, in the West, and me myself included, because I used to be a big meat eater. I used to, when I was in graduate school, the cheapest thing I could find was meat. Meat is still cheaper than good vegetables in the United States. So I can attest to that fact. Meat is a lot cheaper. People eat a lot more meat. However, I'm talking about the Western world as such. However, when somebody shows you, a doctor shows you that if you do this, you eat more plants and blah, 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 you will find a drop in your, in your cholesterol level or whatever it is that we're trying to address, and get them on a path of becoming disease-free. In India, there is a lot of importance given to medical professionals and say, yes, whatever they're saying is true. But what happens in India is people generally say, well, I hear you, but I have been told that, my neighbor's son said, if I eat 2 acroad, my diabetes will go away and stuff like that. And that's what we have noticed. So that is the bad part. But the good part is, in India, what is happening in recent times is people are actually opening their ears and saying, no, I want to listen to you more. I want to actually hear how you've been able to treat this patient and get rid of the condition. So there is at least I feel that there is becoming more of a shift towards listening to medical professionals. Even though we say we're not going to give you medication, we will tell you what you need to do to get rid of your disease. And there are more receptive ears now. The problem is that, whenever we talk to our own relatives or others that are completely vegetarian, they say, why do I have this disease then? And then we tell them that it's because of, you still incorporating a lot of animal-based foods in there and so on and so forth. And slowly but surely there has been a shift, and we are very, very happy about it. So I think, just comparing and contrasting, I feel that, India is moving in that direction. In the West, there are bits and pieces which move to that direction. We move towards more, I don't want to say this, but more Indianized or more Asian ways of living. But in India, we are like that. So we, there's going to be, I feel, in the next 5 years, there will be a groundswell of people saying, yes, I want to listen to you. I want to see how I can. And we notice that in younger patients, right, more and more, because they say, I don't want to be like my father or my grandfather. I don't want that disease now. I'm already having a backache. What should I do about it? So it's phenomenal. We really like it.
Education levels are up, so the acceptance of medical, advice is getting better.
Yes, absolutely.
Our middle class is huge,
Yeah.
and they're by and large well educated.
Yeah.
So that their acceptance of good medical advice with sound reasoning behind it. They may ask you a lot of questions, but that's good if they ask us, and
Right.
then they clarify their doubts.
Yeah.
Their acceptance becomes much better. I
I
totally
noticed that. Completely agree. 40 years ago, all I remember is that somebody just going in and saying, okay, give me the dawai do, and I'm going to go. And now it's not happening. Now they're actually saying, dawai kiske liye? Why do I have to take this medicine? Which is fantastic. Ask us questions. I completely agree with you, doctor.
Thank you. Thank you, doctors. So there is a question for Dr. Sanjeev Khanna. Sir, do you get hollow transcobalamin? Sorry, do you get hollow transcobalamin test done for vitamin B12 status?
There are a few labs which do it, and I have been getting it, done by default from them, but I don't usually ask it because I think it tends to be much more expensive. So I can't totally right now, but it tends to be a little non-specific again. So there are the most important test has been MMA levels, methylmalonic acid levels, which are, if they are high, they very easily tell you, and that can be done in the urine too. The other thing is homocysteine. So an elevation of homocysteine is a very easy way to tell you, and homocysteine is done by most labs. So I wouldn't. There is also an index which has been created by one of the labs where they combine all these 4 parameters, and that improves the sensitivity and the specificity of the test, which is the total serum B12, the holotranscobalamin, the MMA, and the homocysteine. And you put all 4 together, but I think that's rather stretching it too far. That's good for research purposes, but Dr. Sarvanan, I don't do it as a routine. Homocysteine, many labs have started doing as part of the screening protocol, especially in patients where there's a high incidence of chance of getting cardiovascular or cerebrovascular disease.
Okay, thank you, sir. Can you please tell us the relation between vitamin B12 deficiency and increased homocysteine levels and its impact on our heart health?
Well, that's very interesting. That you see that homocysteine needs to get converted to another amino acid, which is called methionine. And in that conversion, there is the use of an enzyme called methylmalonyl mutase, which requires with vitamin B12 as a cofactor, as a coenzyme, as a helping enzyme to the main enzyme. And if that is not, this conversion won't occur. At the same time, there is another simultaneous reaction occurring where N5-methyl tetrahydrofolate gets converted to tetrahydrofolate, THF. And you know that tetrahydrofolate is a very important substance for the formation of purines and pyrimidines, which are the basic factors for forming nucleic acids. And so the very integrity of the cell and the maturation of cell depends on these very important, very vital chemical reactions, biochemical reactions. And both these reactions, the methyl N5-methyl tetrahydrofolate to tetrahydrofolate and homocysteine to methionine, require B12 as a cofactor. So if that doesn't occur, both these reactions come to a standstill. You get accumulation of the N5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, and that's what's called the folate trap, and that accumulates. So cells which need very rapid maturation, which are very metabolically very active tissues like the bone marrow and the surface epithelium of the GI tract, the oral mucosa, the lining of the gut, all these are very rapidly dividing tissues, and they require a lot of this metabolic activity. The moment that comes to a standstill, you'll find that your cell division goes down. So your red blood cell cannot mature. When it matures, it gets smaller. And that, since it doesn't get smaller, the cell remains large, and that's what you call a macrocyte. So the red blood cells remain big, and the WBCs also can't mature, so that they have multiple nuclei, what's called hypersegmented neutrophils. And these are telltale signs that your B12 is deficient and not working. This is also called the poor man's B12 test, that you need not do an expensive assay for B12, which might cost in a lab somewhere around 1,000 rupees. And just if you have a good pathologist who can see a proper peripheral smear under the microscope and tell you that there are multiple nuclei in the polymorph, that's all you need to know, that the B12 is deficient. And a simple CBC can be done, blood count can be done at a very reasonable cost. So these are important tests, and that's a very important question you asked me. Thank you.
Cobalamin, which form is better?
Sorry, I missed.
Yeah.
Sorry, sir. There's another question regarding vitamin B12. So, methylcobalamin or cyanocobalamin, which form is better?
Practically no difference. Both of them seem to work very well. Although in between there were some, papers saying that the cyanide moiety in the cyanocobalamin could be toxic, etc. But in practice, that doesn't happen. Both seem to be working very well. So we can get oral forms, which usually methyl cobalamin or even cyanocobalamin. They both seem to work well.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you. So I have a question regarding pediatrics. I would request Dr. Jenny Prabhu to answer this question. So, ma'am, these days we are seeing a lot of autoimmune diseases in children. So, how can a plant-based diet help these conditions? And can you please share some of your experiences in treating these conditions, especially in children?
Yeah, so I think at the base of most diseases, I guess at the bottom of it is inflammation. That's the cause and the cause for the disease and the cause for it worsening and continuing. So a lot of theories point towards just chronic inflammation, even beginning as a child, probably from toddlerhood, infancy. So I think as more inflammation due to the diet, whether it's due to more animal products, more processed foods, less vegetables, less vitamins, makes kids and adults more prone to autoimmune disease. I also think, kind of as a side note, over sanitization of things, also of just in general. So not as much here, but we notice in the United States, at least, there's a much higher incidence of autoimmune disease, I believe, there than here in children. So, and people are hyper clean where they shouldn't be. I mean, that's a topic, that's a whole separate topic, but I believe that also contributes. An example I can think of in one of my own patients in the US is actually my colleague's son who has type 1 diabetes, which is autoimmune disease, probably the most common in children. And he's very healthy kid. He is now 17, but at the time was 14 years old. And he switched to a plant-based diet on his own. He decided he was going to switch to a plant-based diet. And he had always had very difficult to control diabetes, very volatile. He'd have very low lows, very high blood sugars. And when he took particularly the dairy, even more than the meat, out of his diet, numbers significantly improved. His hemoglobin A1C, which is the average blood sugar, which is what we use to monitor diabetes, improved drastically. And it's something kind of that I also was very surprised to see. We always think of diabetes improving, type 2 diabetes improving with lifestyle changes, but to see an autoimmune disease, to see a type 1 diabetes, and then, like Ajoy mentioned, our patient with rheumatoid arthritis, which is also an autoimmune disease, improve just with changing what he ate is incredible. Also, he had a little bit of tendency towards thyroid hypothyroidism, which again, this is the same child, again, autoimmune, so more prone to autoimmune disease. And he has been able to stay off of thyroid medicine because of that. He's always been kind of borderline, and his numbers have improved since he stopped eating meat and dairy. So he's a great example. Other children, specific to my patients, I can't think of at the moment, but he's always the one that I think about. He was a really impressive example. It's still doing well. And I should say this, he's a wrestler, and he's like, you look at him as a great example of a kid that is a plant-based child he's 6'3" and very muscular, lean and muscular. A type 1 diabetic. So you always think of a type 1 diabetic being tiny and skinny, but he's the complete opposite. Not at all.
All right, amazing. Thank you very much, Doctor. There's another question.
I'd like to add
Um,
to that, if with your permission, Dr. Saravanan.
please, sir. Yeah.
He said that there's a very interesting paper by Dr. Neil Barnard on this very thing which you mentioned, and it's in relation to rheumatoid arthritis and a plant-based diet. Neil Barnard again happens to be one of our heroes for most of us, and his paper says that very clearly that giving a plant-based diet seems to reduce the exacerbations of rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is again, rampant right now in our country. I would say that that's a very interesting paper. I remember what he has written is that gut leakiness is reduced by a plant-based diet, because you get a much better diversity of microorganisms on a plant-based diet as compared to a meat diet. And the nutritional factors which these bacteria then produce in the stomach, in the gut, help to prevent the absorption of substances which could enter the circulation by virtue of a leaky gut and promote autoimmunity. So all what separates us from the environment is the cell lining of the gut, just one cell thick lining of the gut, and maintaining its integrity seems to be very important, especially also apart from autoimmune disease in the GI tract. Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis also could be having a connection to the biochem and to the microbial diversity of the gut. So there's much less families of microbes in the meat eater as compared to the plant eater. We have a much larger diversity of organisms of different colonies. In the normal colonies, normally one should have at least 400 different species of organisms, whereas the meat eaters have much less, and they have the ones which are far more pro-inflammatory compared to the plant eaters. So Neil Barnard's work has definitely shown that.
Thank you
It's
very much,
pretty
sir.
much like, whose food is available. That species of bacteria will thrive. That is the rule of nature. This is called as like terrain theory. What is the food of your food?
Right.
They're our first line of defense. They are our friends actually. So we that's our first army actually. They do a lot of protection and good job for us.
Very true.
They also digest all the toxins and whatever before it can enter the blood. Yeah, through the thin lining that you were mentioning. And yeah, leaky gut syndrome is the thing that they talk about these days. Yes, wonderful.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes there are patients about the fact that mother's milk has 30% nutrition, not for the child, but for the gut. And they're very surprised at that. 30% of the nutrition is not really for the child. It's for, making the gut stronger and more robust. And that's what leads to a robust child's immunity.
In fact, they want to add, for the C-section babies, they still want to expose them to the vaginal bacterial microflora because that's very beneficial to baby.
Dr. Jenny, till what age do you recommend breastfeeding now?
So the American Academy of Pediatrics says at least 6 months, but they recommend it if possible up till 2 years. So I always say 6 months is the goal, and then anything after that is a bonus. But honestly, I, as a mother myself, know how extremely difficult breastfeeding is. So even if the mother can breastfeed 2 or 3 times after birth, that's enough to give, not enough, that's a great kickstart to your child's immunity just with the colostrum. The very first, they get all those immunoglobulins just from that. And as I said, helps their gut. But 6 months is a great goal. And then 2 years is recommended if possible in real life.
Thank you.
So there is another question regarding allergies in children with dairy consumption and your observations. Dr. Jenny Prabhu, I would request you to answer this question. So allergies in children with dairy consumption.
Yeah, I think again, this all goes back to, so I guess a couple of things. Inflammation again is a huge component or a huge contributor to allergies. If they're referring to environmental allergies, I guess as well as food allergies too, so both can be applied. In terms of environmental allergies, dairy consumption, dairy has pro-inflammatory components. Inflammation does not allow, if there's a chronic state of even low level inflammation, your immune system can't mount the appropriate response to allergens. So you just become more prone to developing sneezing and chronic runny nose, chronic runny eyes, also skin conditions, that sort of thing. And then also food allergies too, which again, sorry, I keep referring to the United States, but there's so many food allergies in the US. And I feel like it's more and more and more. And I think that probably other than the inflammation has to do with leaky gut also, because the intestinal tract and the bloodstream is exposed to things that it shouldn't be exposed to. So then you develop antibodies to those foods or those substances. And in fact, you can think of it kind of as people have probably, without realizing it, known it for a while, because everyone tells you here in the US, when you have a cold or your allergies are bad, when you say stop drinking milk, right? Because milk makes the mucus thick and makes it harder to cough everything up and the congestion worse. So that actually has a scientific basis, and people have been saying that for decades.
But it's not just symptomatic. It's more than that.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying that people have said that forever. So it's been known forever, just not proven in the literature, I guess.
Thank you.
There's a lot of dairy alternatives now. Even, we moved here 2 years ago, and even in the last 2 years, we've noticed such a improvement in availability of, cashew milk, almond milk, oat milk, and of course soy milk was there, but so many other alternatives that if you expose your kids to it, they will get used to it and enjoy it. And use our kids as an example.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. So, Dr. Ajay Prabhu, I have a question for you. So, this is about being obese and having sleep apnea. We see these kind of patients these days. And please tell us how lifestyle changes and plant-based diet can be helpful for this condition, obesity combined with sleep apnea.
So, you want to take that question?
So I guess obesity can be a cause for sleep apnea simply because of the crowded airway in the back, the back of the throat, I guess. It's why it's called obstructive sleep apnea. So the cure for obstructive sleep apnea is losing weight or having surgery to thin out the area, take out the adenoids, or so obviously that's a lot more invasive. There's also the CPAP machines, which basically blast pressure into your respiratory tract to open things up so your body can get enough oxygen. So by virtue of switching to a more plant-based diet, to improving your overall lifestyle health, I think 99% of people will lose weight following this lifestyle. And the good part about it is it will stay off. It's not a crash diet that you lose, 5 kilos and then gain 10 kilos back a couple weeks later. So it's a long-lasting lifestyle change. And once you get the pounds off, the kilograms off, then you don't have to deal with the sleep apnea. And sleep apnea is a severely underdiagnosed condition. It causes, other than it in itself causes weight gain. It's kind of a vicious cycle. It causes heart problems. It causes memory problems. It causes depression. It causes, really, it affects the entire body. And I think poor sleep is at the basis for many, many lifestyle diseases. I think as doctors, we often forget how important sleep is. Without good sleep, your cortisol levels go up, which is the stress hormone. So, and that affects just about every part of the body.
I just want to add one more thing to this, if I can speak. There's a lot of fat loss during when you go to a plant-based diet, and that helps tremendously, because as soon as you start losing fat, especially from this part of the body, your sleep apnea will improve. So we don't tell patients about the fact that you will lose weight, etc. We just start treating the sleep apnea part itself, and by going to a strictly plant-based diet, when the fat loss occurs, they themselves start seeing an improvement.
Yeah, it's specific to so cortisol, which I mentioned, that hormone that's affected not only by weight loss but by less inflammation, etc. We learn in medical school that a symptom of too much cortisol is a buffalo hump. So it's this part, the posterior part of the neck. So this whole area is affected by too much cortisol. So he's right. As soon as you start reducing the chronic cortisol levels, you see fat loss here, which helps sleep apnea.
Thank you, doctors, for your explanation. So, Dr. Rupa Shah, do you have any other questions, or would you like to give any announcements? I think we are coming to the completion of the program.
Yes, Dr. Sarvanan, it's such a pleasure to have all these doctors talk, and we coming on a same platform and discussing, talking, sharing. But all good things also come to an end. Like today's is the last session. But all those who are attending and are listening to the recording also of this, that for next 15 days, all the replays are available. So, if any of the talks you want to listen again or catch up or forward it to your friends, just go ahead and do it, because the event is still open for next 15 days for you to listen to all the talks. And secondly, that this is the first time that we did this kind of a event, just to get going, just to let the world know that this is happening. It's a global phenomenon. Uh, Doctors from all walks of life have come in and have shared their personal journey and their learning, and then all have now begun a new path of, I call it as before prescription. Before prescription is all this is what comes. Prescription should be the last one. Before that, all this is what we need to do. And so the doctor of future will prescribe good food, as the part of the therapy, change of the lifestyle, before even prescribe any medication. So we would like to see a world where there is less and less prescriptions and more looking at the cause, and then helping the cause to reverse the diseases. If the lifestyle is the cause, then why not change the lifestyle instead of just prescribing, which is only a very giving a false sense of security, or thinking that you're well, but you're not actually. The disease worsens, the complications worsen, and you also don't change your lifestyle, so you also add up to it. So the time is right now to start sharing the new knowledge with the world, and we would like to continue. The website will be on with all the content that is available. We will do something with the permission of all the doctors, if we can have this uh, available to people to watch throughout the year, as and when they come and visit the site, and we'll see how that can be done. And as we have asked many questions and many different polls are taken, and we've asked to hundreds of you have replied that this can become an annual event, and we can gather and do each year larger, with even better preparation. We will have much better preparation, much wider subjects, and lot more data. And for our Indian people, from the doctors of Indian origin, this is the way forward. What do you say? Do you want to add anything, any of you?
I think you should put it on YouTube.
It's a commendable thing they're doing. I applaud you for that. It's very good because we need this so that more public can be exposed. That there's no not just taking a medication and taking that's not the real intervention. Real intervention is this. You intervene with a lifestyle change and you see changes happening. So I applaud you for setting this up.
Absolutely. And the mainstream doctors, when they start coming on the front and recommending this, there's a huge weightage, right? Even my colleagues will listen now because I just said, oh, look at that. I'm not the only one. Look, there's so many of us. They're not from one part of the world, they are from every part of the world. Now, at least you listen, then choice is yours.
Let's put it on YouTube, Dr. Rupa, so that the link
We'll
remains
see.
active always and anyone can
Yeah.
see it and review it whenever they want.
Yeah, we'll see how what is the future structure that is coming up, and certainly that's the way forward. We want to do a lot more. We want to probably do some online courses for medical students, also for our own fraternity. If we can do once in a month some kind of CME for our own learning, so that one of us present and all of us can listen on a particular topic, which we used to do many years ago, right, Dr. Sarvanan? When we were a very
Yeah.
small group of doctors, just to help each other and bond and learn. So that, and then there's be something for the general public. But our criteria will be to take the doctors who are, the cream of the society, who are the, one with the knowledge, and when they speak, the everyone will listen. For the health particularly,
Absolutely.
and particularly also we have so many health coaches who are doing good job, but they, because they don't have a degree, there's a problem. And when we join hands and we help them out to when to stop, when to fine tune, when to not to overclaim, when not to uh, cross the line, then we all can work together and do very good work. Plus we are very much into wanting to make it as a very solid platform. Right now the data is available, but it's not enough, but more data will be available, and then we will move towards becoming evidence based platform with very solid information available. This is what we're moving it. I think it will take a few years before we get some more recognition, but yeah, the way forward now. I know in US there's a conference where more than 500 doctors gather in California every year, right? And also Dr. Neil Barnard, Dr. McDougall, I mean, 300 doctors gather every year. So that's for doctors, then for general public. We'll divide into two different parts, and we'll offer information and also our own learning and progress, and also for them to come onto the path of becoming healthy. Yes, that's the way forward.
Yeah,
It will be
that's
there on
really
YouTube
excellent.
also, but there's a model. We will work on it, which is the correct model. We'll work on it. Then it becomes very solid.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dr. Rupa Shah, for all your efforts and organizing this wonderful Health Revolution Summit. We have been speaking about this since many years, as you said, in our sessions. I mean, where we used to have our get-togethers for the plant-based doctors. So now this happened. It's really a really good thing, and I hope this has benefited a lot of people. I would like to especially thank each and every healthcare practitioner who has joined hands with us and who have shared their time, their knowledge, their wisdom, their expertise, and they have taken time out of their busy schedules to come to this program. We are really, really grateful to all of them. And today, I would like to thank all our guests today as well. And I would like to thank all the sponsors and all the people who have supported us, our participants who are always encouraging us with their questions, with their positive feedback. It's really, really encouraging and happy to be a part of this Health Revolution Summit. And I hope that we'll be able to do more in future and bring health and happiness to everyone.
Thank you very much. And namaste. Have a very good night. And maybe wherever you are in the world, a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
being here.
everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Namaste.